Hey, what's up everybody? Today is Tuesday, June 30th, end of June. Hope you're doing well. If you haven't done so already, or if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on with SBA and pandemic. And if you haven't done so already, and when you have a chance, please smash that like button. I would really appreciate it. Also, please leave a comment down below if you have any questions. And I'd also like to know if you're doing any kind of house projects or house improvements during the quarantine or while you're staying at home. I know in my house, we're doing gardening, we're putting new plants up in the backyard, and we're even thinking about finishing our basement. So what are you doing to help make your home like a more enjoyable place to be if you're gonna be stuck at home more? All right, today I'm gonna be talking about the PPP, how it's expiring, whether or not you can apply for it still. I'll talk about that later in the video, where you can still apply for it. And also going to be talking about the new PPP that's being talked about. So at the moment, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, has about $140 billion left in funding. As you know, the PPP got funded on the first wave with about $350 billion, and then on the second wave with about $310 billion, which means around $660 billion of PPP funds are available. I think $520 billion have been dispersed. So today's the last day for any lender to get an SBA application number, which is like a required process, a required step to get your PPP loan approved. And so if you haven't applied for the PPP yet, you better get your ass on it if you still even can. I know a lot of banks have stopped taking applications as early as last week just to be able to process the applications that they already have. But there's a few places that I think are still taking applications, and I'll give you one of the places later in this video. So with $140 billion left, and with today being the last day, what the hell are you gonna do with that money? So there's been talks of a second Paycheck Protection Program. It's called the Prioritized Paycheck Protection Program Act. And it's not a bill yet. It's not even a bill yet. It's just like a memo. It's like people talking about it. But there's been, slightly different versions of it provided in the Senate. You have like Senator Cardin's version, and I think the House has some versions too. But basically the main body of it represent the same things. For the Prioritized PPP Act, it's going to have similar attributes as the first PPP. But in order to qualify, you first have to have used up your initial PPP, or you must be on track to use it up soon. This program will be 2.5 times of monthly average payroll, which is the same as the original PPP. You can get it forgiven in as soon as 8 weeks, or you can at least apply for forgiveness in as soon as 8 weeks. You don't have to wait for the full 24 weeks. It won't be available to publicly traded companies. This program is meant to target smaller companies. It's meant to prioritize those companies. There are some versions of this program that only allow companies with less than 100 employees to apply, rather than the initial PPP that allowed companies with less than 500 employees to apply. And while that's still, you can view that as like a large, still pretty big company. It's not like a mega company like those publicly traded companies, but 100 employees is still pretty big, right? They're setting aside either $25 billion or 20% of the allocated funds for this program to smaller companies. And I'm talking 10 employees or less is what they're saying. So if companies with 10 employees or less, they're gonna get like their own bucket of funding. And also, the SBA is also supposed to prioritize underserved businesses and businesses in rural areas, okay? So those are some of the major changes from this program, from the last program, is they're really trying to target smaller businesses. It's supposed to have the same forgiveness qualifications, same qualifications as the original PPP, where you have to spend at least 60% on payroll, and the rest can be on rents, utilities, and all that stuff. And similar rules with like FTE reduction or wage reduction. As I said before, 8 weeks, you can apply for forgiveness. You don't have to wait the full 24 weeks. So that's good. Now, one thing that they're also doing to help prioritize small businesses is to give lenders a minimum processing fee of $2,500. At least in the one version that I read, they're proposing to give $2,500 minimum to each applicant that lenders process. And this is to prevent lenders from picking and choosing larger applications over smaller applications. They're trying to make it more fair, which in my opinion is a little ridiculous. It should be done first come, first serve anyway. That's probably a more efficient rule to enforce than to just pay out a shit ton of money to lenders for just to try to make it fair. Should impose a rule, I think, for first come, first serve. Another change that they're looking to do is to force the SBA to change their application to include some demographic information of their applicants. I think because they just want to track and see, what kind of communities are being most impacted and how to better serve their communities. At least that's my hope. That's why they're doing it. Basically, whenever in doubt, like the more information, the more data you have, the better decisions you can make. So I'm hoping that they're going to use that demographic information to provide better assistance in the near future as well. Now, do I have a timeline on when this bill will be introduced or when it will pass? I have no idea. It's been a memo here for like a week or two, and there hasn't been any new bills on congress.gov. I've checked. So yeah, at this point, it's just been a memo. It's been a discussion. It hasn't been much more than that. I don't really have a timeline on that, but as soon as it's introduced as a bill, I'll let you know, or as soon as there's some major movements, I will let you know. So what can you do in the meantime? If the PPP is running out, or if you've exhausted your PPP, what can you do now? There's a bunch of state and local funding programs that you should really look into. And while I do have like a decent list of all the states, definitely just check with your state. Check your city, your county, and your state, all three of those things. Because I know in Colorado, Denver has like a small business relief grants, like an emergency small relief grants that you can apply for. The county of Arapahoe, which is where my business office resides, they have a small business relief grants as well. I've looked at these applications and they seem to be much more involved. Much more involved than the EIDL or the PPP application. But, it's an opportunity, at least in Colorado here, if you have businesses in those areas, to get some free grants to help, float you through the pandemic. There are tons of other programs out there that I'm sure you can find. So definitely check with your state and your city and your county to see what kind of programs you have there. It's really important to just be resourceful. How important is your business to you? You got to be resourceful to help keep it afloat. If you got the EIDL and it's enough, then great. But if it's not, if the PPP is not, then by all means, check your state and local government for their sources of funding. Okay? So with that being said, where can you still apply for the PPP? It's the last day. I probably should have made a video on this topic yesterday, but that's where we're at. So I know that bluevine.com is still accepting applications. It's BLUEVINE.com. And there's a clear message on there that says, we cannot guarantee that we will process your application by the deadline, but it's still worth it to try if you haven't done so already. And obviously the sooner the better. By the time you're watching this video, it's probably going to be around 7:30 Mountain Time. Just apply as soon as possible, all right? The sooner you apply, the sooner you can get your application processed. If it was declined for any reason, you can apply again. Bluevine says you can apply again if you get declined. You probably just have to use a different email address, okay? Check that out. Let me know if you need any assistance or help on that. I'd be happy to do that, okay? Last thing, just wanted to read some comments from my last video, questions that might be useful for people. So this question is about the EIDL funds, and my last video was about Uber and Lyft drivers. So this question is targeted towards that, but you can apply it to any asset in your business. Okay, so Joseph says, I heard that we can't use the loan for major repairs, but I'm not sure what that means. For instance, what about tires, belts, hoses, things like that? All right, Joseph, thanks for the question. Those things that you listed are actually more like maintenance, like regular occurring maintenance, and not actually repairs. So it is in my opinion that regular maintenance is allowable for the idle funds to be used on. Okay, so Joe Angel says, how about as a sole proprietor, can I pay myself? So this question is tricky. There's no like real clear answer. That's my cat. There's no clear answer here because as a sole proprietor, you can't really pay yourself a payroll. And so paying yourself actually means you're taking a distribution, right? So I'm under the impression that you can reimburse yourself for expenses, for like business expenses. Like if you have mileage that you incur in the normal days of your business, if you incur mileage, you can reimburse yourself for that mileage. Same thing with like a home office deduction that you take on your taxes, you know, the portion of your rent, utilities, that stuff. I'm under the belief that you can reimburse yourself for those things. However, it's still kind of unclear to me whether or not you can pay yourself as a sole proprietor because that is technically taking a distribution. So my recommendation there is just to pay yourself with your earned income, with your earned money, your earned sales that you made, and just use the idle funds for you know what it's intended for, which are the working capital expenses. Unless you have payroll for yourself, if you pay yourself a salary, a W-2 salary, then you know you can definitely use your funds for that. But my recommendation is just stick to the expenses for the idle funds and pay yourself with your revenue earned. Okay, that's all I got for today. Thanks so much for joining me. Again, if you haven't done so already, please smash that like button. And also, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button for more updates to come. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.